John Trump, do solemnly swear
I, Donald John Trump, do solemnly swear
that I will faithfully execute
that I will faithfully execute
the office of President of the United States
the office of President of the United States
and will, to the best of my ability,
and will, to the best of my ability,
preserve, protect, and defend
preserve, protect, and defend
the Constitution of the United States.
the Constitution of the United States.
So help me God.
So help me God.
Congratulations, Mr. President.
Ladies and gentlemen, citizens of the world, Donald J. Trump, the 45th and the 47th United States President, been sworn in there yesterday with his Vice President, J.D. Vance, and of course the business of government and governance has started with him, and it was a day being looked forward to by, just like I said, Americans and citizens of the world. And it has come and gone, and governance, as I said, has started. There have been developments, very interesting ones as well. Now, we look into that, how as he started, when there is this popular phrase around here that was made popular by, the president, Bola Tinubu, Nigeria's president, when he said, I'm going to hit the ground running. One would say maybe this that Donald Trump has done is called hitting the ground running, because there have been a range of proclamations, signing of executive orders, retrieval of some executive orders. And before former President Joe Biden left as well, he too signed some executive orders. He did some pardons for some persons, It was really a day of executive orders. And, people try to wield the biggest power available, which is the office of the president. So we'll look into that in the course of the program. We're being joined right now by a resident of the United States of America, a journalist, and of course a public affairs analyst. Femi Olanipekin joins us virtually. Good morning. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
All right. It's official. Donald J. Trump is the president of the United States right now. And the old world was watching with keen interest how it's going to be. I guess there wasn't any disappointment with the organization, the logistics, guests around the world, the swearing in, and, what followed it, all kind of pronouncement, that followed that swearing in. And this is a man, many persons will say, you might not like him for so many things, but one thing you can agree with is he is aware of the presidential powers that he has. Give us a sense of how the day went.
Well, thank you again for having me. It's the beginning of a new era, the end of the Biden era. Our statesman has served for 50 years, starting from around 1973 or thereabout, as a senator, representing his state, and then rising to become a vice president, taking a break of about some 8 years, and then 4 years rather, and then becoming the president of the United States. But I'm sure I would have loved to end on a higher note, And the man that is spent his presidential campaign trying to warn America about, and it was successful, in fact, in the first time, is the one who is coming out sort of upending his legacy. But that's for Biden, by the way. But the main issue here, the main news is that Donald J. Trump is returning to the White House. And it's an uncharted territory, not really uncharted because it's been here before, but for many analysts, some of those who you would say are independent, are not biased, not for the red, not for the blue. This is the beginning of some interesting times in international diplomacy, in world politics, in American history. And the interesting thing is, this man has been there before. He made some mistakes, in the first time. This time, he seems to understand the system a bit better. So perhaps he'll be able to push through some of his own ideas and some of his policies. And he keeps telling everyone that, you know who he is. He's a straight talker, telling everyone that Americans elected him overwhelmingly. Ignore the fact that the margin could be like less than 2%. But then he won all of the swing states. And so it was a huge ceremony yesterday, as against what happened 4 years ago. His opponents, those who he defeated, were all there. The Clintons, the Obamas, the Bushes, were there. Against what many media reported before, Kamala Harris was also there in person. And they were made to see through his inaugural speech, which was not the traditional inaugural speech. It was longer. We had to spend more than about 36 minutes to listen to him. Ordinarily, inaugural speeches of presidents have unifying themes, and then talk about what the future holds. Donald Trump spent half of that time validating himself, talking about his experiences, about his persecution, about the fact that and he actually made some very instructive statements, which should say, about how he believes that God preserved his life, saving him from that assassination attempt with a bullet grazing his ear, because he wants him to be alive to make America great again. And he talked about the fact that this is the beginning of a golden era, for America. It was an interesting time. The ceremony was moved indoors because of cold. There had been insinuations that some security concerns perhaps forced that movement, but right now America is extremely cold. Yesterday there was a snowstorm. Several flights were canceled across the country, and Washington D.C. is particularly cold. In fact, he made reference to it in some of his events yesterday, and so it was moved into the rotunda of the Capitol Hill, and not every of the other event also indoors, but that was just about it. But it was interesting. The ceremony is still ongoing in some other parts. There is a musical performance, I think, at Liberty Hall as we speak. It's called the Commander-in-Chief Ball. He's at the traditional luncheon with members of Congress and all of that. But it's an interesting time ahead for America, and indeed for the world. And like you rightly noted in your intro, it got on to work. I mean, if you're looking for the perfect definition of getting to work, starting, hitting the ground running, here is it. He signed a flurry of executive orders, rescinding about 78 of Biden's previous executive orders. Is made active some of his promises. He has activated some of his promises during his campaign, in fact. And by the way, that inaugural speech read like he was speaking at a typical Trump rally, campaigning to his supporters. But some of the executive orders released all of the J6, those who participated in the invasion of Congress 4 years ago, around at the same time when the results of the election that year were to be certified. The election, he continued to insist were rigged. Many people disagree with him on that and felt that it wasn't statesman enough to have accepted the result of the election. There's even more controversial elections in American history, like you have the one between George W. Bush, and Al Gore. Al Gore felt that it was slighted, could have gone to court, but then he let it pass in American interest. But, Donald Trump continues to insist on one. So all of those people have been part of, about 1,500 of them, many of them in jails. Almost all of them have been released as we speak. Maybe just one or two left. All of their families have been keeping vigil at the prisons, especially in Washington and some other parts of the country where some of these insurrectionists were kept. And some of the more significant, more consequential executive orders that he signed, were the ones withdrawing the United States from the World Health Organization. That's significant. The United States contribute more than 16% of WHO funding. And so withdrawing the United States is significant. There are concerns about impact on global health. There are concerns about the fact that America is going back into isolationism, these isolationist policies, and that if America withdraws, nature abhors a vacuum, then you have other countries like China stepping into that void. But he claims that some of these international organizations are anti-American in their posture, and of course, so he wants to, and Trump is transactional as a leader. Perhaps he wants to force their hands, get them to come and sit down and redraw negotiations or redraw the terms of of how they relate. He's withdrawn from the climate, the Paris climate accords. Some of his supporters are claiming that this is going to save America almost $1 trillion, that America is essentially funding the rest of the world in terms of climate agreement, and that funding is to America's disadvantage. He's also, during his inaugural speech, he talked about the fact that his administration will henceforth only recognize two genders. There are people, some of his supporters, interestingly, who feel that is not far-reaching enough, that, he should have outrightly banned LGBTQ. But I feel that would be too extreme, because even in his cabinet, his pick for Treasury Secretary is gay, and but essentially, if you're filling a form in America, in most instances, you have a list. When instead of choosing male or female, you have a long list in some organizations that gives you several other options. And so this, perhaps especially when you are dealing with federal regulations, federal government essentially ends that, so it's male and female, and there's a couple of other ones, and perhaps the most far-reaching for many people, and maybe for those in Nigeria, and especially immigrants, will be the executive order that is signed, in his words, clarifying birthright in America. That has been raising a lot of ire, and many of these executive orders also expect to be subject of litigations in the days to come, especially for this one. The right to citizenship of anyone born on American soil is enshrined in the 14th Amendment of the United States Constitution. And this birthright seems to withdraw the right for anyone born on American soil whose parents are here illegally. And that executive order even seems more far-reaching in the sense that it also withdraws that same right for children of citizens who are here, whether on student visa or on H-1B visa, all of that. But I've seen reactions also, many people saying, well, you can't do this. You can't rewrite the Constitution by a stroke of pen. You don't rewrite the Constitution by executive. And I'm also aware that there is a Supreme Court judgment, I think in 1898, is about a Chinese citizen, Kim Wong or something like that, that challenged that. And I think that was where the doctrine of soil juris, something like that, came into play. And that Supreme Court judgment in 1898 clarified and interpreted that anyone born on American soil, except their children or foreign diplomats, anyone born on American soil that is subject to American laws, irrespective of the status of their father or of their parents, are American citizens. So I expect that part of the pushback you see from the media, and especially from civil rights activists like the ACLU, the American Civil Liberties Union, who before now have also prepared a series of lawsuits intending to challenge many of these policies. So I expect that, we're still midnight here in America. By the time it's daybreak, you should also be seeing lawsuits flying all over the country challenging these executive orders. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you. That was comprehensive. And I must say, possibly you've answered some of the questions we'll have asked. Thank you for that. But, you've already, hinged on it, just like I said, on some of the concerns. And the very chief is the gender thing, actually, and he was very categorical on that. I'd like you to please hang in there for the benefit of those that didn't see the pronouncement. You can just take a look.
This week, I will also end the government policy of trying to socially engineer race and gender into every aspect of public and private life. We will forge a society that is colorblind and merit-based. As of today, it will henceforth be the official policy of the United States government that there are only two genders, male and female.
I'm not sure if you heard me, but you've seen it as well, where you said for the business of the government, officially, the government will recognize only male and female gender. And almost every person in that hall stood up. How significant was that?
Significant. In that, you saw the reaction in the hall, but it's a larger crowd outside, of the Capitol. About 20,000 of them also watching on screens. Watching proceedings on screen, and that was also like the highest point for many of them. I think that pronouncement drew the biggest applause, and it's controversial, but there are people who believe that issues around gender and all of that is actually about the minority trying to impose the ideas on the majority. That there is a silent majority who really do not care about all of these things and are getting increasingly worried about how this is getting mainstreamed and being foisted on others. And so there's a lot of other people who feel, well, I don't care if you want to be this or that, but then can we please make this personal? Can we please make this remain private instead of trying to foist these, and then it's not getting to a stage where it's been foisted on children, government gets involved, and all of that. So it's perhaps I also expect that there will be some challenges, especially Americans value their freedom a lot. And so I also expect that there will be some legal challenges as regards, the right to that. But this is the president of the country, and it's saying essentially, especially as it deals with federal regulations, going forward, we only recognize male and female. So it's going to get some significant support. And like I said, some of his supporters even feel that it's not far-reaching enough. But I feel that that's also will be directly challenging the Constitution. American Constitution is something that Americans prize a lot, and that's why the birthright issue will be challenged. And many people say it's directly in conflict with the Constitution and will lead to constitutional crises if not well handled. So for the male and female issue, the gender issue, it signals a significant shift from the previous government and from the previous years, saying this is what we want, let's end this confusion. And that goes far right into the heart of the American society. It's ending all of that within the American military, part of what he campaigned against, and part of what many of his supporters are against is what he called introducing wokeism into the American military, saying American military is being watered down, is no longer the lethal fighting force that is known to be, because they are bringing very strange ideas to the military, saying you're having transgender and all of that, and American military is focusing more on that instead of focusing on what makes them warriors and makes them the best fighting force in the world. So it's expected that some of these, the implementation, in fact, many transgender people here, the moment Donald Trump won election, felt very bad. Many of them said they have mental issues, mental concerns about living in a Donald Trump America. Many of them, I've seen reports, I've read reports of many people, transgender, going to take more security training to protect themselves because they're worried about a potential backlash of President Trump. So it was swift. He did that right, on the inaugural, during his inaugural speech, backed it up with an executive order, and it's expected that he's going to go also with the end of what is called the DEI, the Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion program that Biden has so pushed, and it's been a defining theme in the Western world in the past years. And he also said in a speech yesterday that, going forward, it'll be colorblind and appointments will only be on merit. So these issues affect them. Many people are saying, well, perhaps it could also affect other minorities because these transgenders are also classified as, minorities. But it's a significant shift from where we're coming from, and a peep into what the future holds really for people like that here. Like I said earlier on, when you fill in some forms here, you have a whole list. It's like a bucket list of genders. You have cisgender and all of that. That for the average Nigerian or the average African who comes from a deeply conservative continent, we find weird and somewhat strange, but the people here are used to that, and many people live with it. You have a list of what you want. Everybody can become what they want, but the president is saying we're simplifying this. Everybody, he actually used the word common sense, saying we're returning to male and female. So it remains to be seen if that also will be challenged. I expect that many of his executive orders and his policies will be challenged, but the advantage I think he has now is he's been there before. He knew how some of these things were frustrated. He claims, and some of his supporters claims, that senior public servants, civil servants in American civil service, frustrated some of his policies last time. So that's why he's also asking for powers to be able to fire some of these civil servants. I think there's a part of the Constitution of America that protects them from being fired just anyhow, but I think he's going to be able to do that. And one of the other things I also did that many people perhaps did not pay attention to, part of the executive orders also was releasing an executive order that mandated that civil servants return to government offices to work. Many of them have been working virtually in the past few years, and some American offices, government offices, have not had that much occupant. These are some of the ideas of Elon Musk, who believes that everyone should work physically in the offices, as obtains in many other private offices across the country. So many people also believe that that mandate, that executive order, will lead to many of these civil servants resigning in droves.
Okay, Mr. Femi, I would come from the fact that some persons actually seeing the inauguration speech yesterday as more like Trump is declaring a form of war on other countries that are trying to subdue them. Like when he said, we're going to earn back the respect that we had lost, America had lost. What would you say about that? Did America actually lose its respect before other countries? Or was he just trying to be political in more like sabotaging the previous administration?
Well, like I said earlier on, it was, even for me, a neutral, deeply concerning that Biden and Kamala Harris had to sit there. They were practically beside or behind him, on the rostrum, having to listen to a complete repudiation of the administration. Well, that said, the issue about earning the respect of the world, this has been a recurring theme in his campaigns and rallies, and Donald Trump and many of his supporters and Republicans feel that America is not respected again on the international stage, and America needs to be respected. It depends on who you ask. Personally, I feel that Western civilization, American influence is waning. And it's down to a number of factors, the rise of China. China is ultimately going to be a major superpower. It's already, major advancements in technology. They have the numbers, the economy is booming, and they seem to be well placed to challenge the hegemony of the United States. And if America continues to go in decline, then China will inherit and be the sole superpower. That sort of influences such statements, and Trump has repeatedly, and is also a major concern within even American bureaucrats, foreign diplomats and the diplomats, that China is a major challenge for America, whether on either side of the aisle, whether Democrats or Republican. That's a major refrain from American politicians. They are concerned, they're worried of rising China influence. Part of earning the respect, perhaps, I think he is making reference to, you hear Donald Trump saying, if he was president, the crisis between China, in Russia and Ukraine wouldn't have happened. The war, he said, it's unfortunate. He feels that's part of American leadership failing. The crisis in the Middle East, it will tell you that during his time there were no wars. He was president for 4 years, and in a very long time there were no new wars in the world started by or America getting involved in any war. So I think he's speaking from such a standpoint, saying we need to earn the respect of the world, and like you said, concerns about how his relationship with the rest of the world will be. While he was signing the executive order, by the way, he made a show of that. It's not usual that you have American presidents signing executive orders in front of their fans. He did that. Donald Trump is a showman. He's a showbiz guy. He signed in front of his fans, and when he got back to the White House and he was signing some other executive orders, he signed flurry of them. There were journalists in front of him asking questions. It was like a press conference. So he was signing, he was busy working, he was also addressing the press. It's funny, it's interesting, and it's also laughable. And he was asked about Greenland, just beside Denmark. And he's made comments before now that he was going to sort of acquire Greenland. And there's been controversy about that, about how America should not be speaking in such manner about taking over other countries. Greenland is an autonomous part of Denmark. They have their own government and prime minister, but then they're still under Denmark. His son, by the way, went to Greenland, and then I think he met some of the leadership of that country. So Donald Trump was asked while he was signing his executive orders, and he talked about the fact that those people like us, and I think we'll be able to work something out with them. And they also made some effort at clarifying. The problem is you may not be able to trust Donald Trump absolutely. I'm sorry to say, but then he lies sometimes. Some people will say he lies a lot, but I think most politicians also, lie. So, but his own is just that he's not given to the diplomacies and speaking in certain expected standards. But he talked about the fact that they will look into it, and they said it's actually for a security concerns. While he's
Mr. Femi, sorry to cut you in. Sorry to cut you here. Like you just said something now. He said he lies sometimes. I would love to bring up something here, some things he specifically talked about, like the Gulf of Mexico and the Panama Canal. He said, we're taking them back. And he said, Gulf of Mexico will be changed to Gulf of America. So do you think this are just political talks, or he's actually going to be doing these things?
So knowing Donald Trump for who he is, you can't say those are political talks. His attitude to leadership is transactional, and he's a leader who places everything on the table, and and also hides everything off the table. And so I think this will be down to transactions with those concerned. He's talked about the Panama Canal, about how he feels that canal shouldn't have been given to Panama in the first place, because Americans built it, spent a lot on it, and a lot of American lives were lost. And he is just speaking it out. But I think it's also a concern for other American leaders, whether Democrats or Republicans, about growing Chinese influence on that canal. And the fact that, is also hurting, he claims, is hurting American economy because of the exorbitant, charges that American ships and even the American Navy are made to pay there. I feel that Donald Trump is trying to envision an America, that has some wider influence again. But this could come into conflict with some of the allies, because Denmark is an ally, Panama should be an ally. But I also said the other time, Chinese influence is also growing across the world. And this is a major concern, not only for him, but also, for other American leaders. The issue of the Gulf of Mexico, the Gulf of America is laughable. I mean, if you see the clip, Hillary Clinton burst into a laugh when he made that statement about changing the Gulf of Mexico to the Gulf of America. I mean, this remains to be seen. If other nations of the world will agree and will also continue or will start calling the Gulf of Mexico Gulf of America.
Okay, Mr. Fami, talking about the Chinese industry or the China, the Chinese influence now. I think he made mention of that yesterday, but that's what led to the Panama Canal. He said the Panama Canal is now being controlled by the Chinese government. So they're taking it back. So do you think it's because the Chinese government is actually involved in this Panama Canal? That's why Trump is actually hitting to get it back?
Well, I think it could be a major reason. Like I said, Chinese influence is growing in most part of the world. In Africa here, there are many initiatives, and it's easier for China. They have a huge population. They have a booming economy. And incidentally, I think it was President Jimmy Carter that sort of brought China back into global reckoning, sort of extended an olive branch to China, sort of brought them from isolation back then, and then gradually. And because they do not have democracy, they are able to do things at a faster, pace. And their masters, they are doing better in technology. The number of patents, Chinese patents, on a yearly basis is even more than that of America. So it's a worry for America. And there's been some disputes as to if what Donald Trump saying about China controlling the Panama Canal is the truth or not. But there is a concern about a deal signed by the Panamanian government regarding the management of the canal. I think it's from a company from Hong Kong. Hong Kong is technically part of China. So it's a concern, and it's about restoring American dignity. Donald Trump is not given to political correctness. There are other issues in other parts of the world. Western leaders will try and manage and, use euphemism for. Donald Trump is known to be a straight talker, and that's what makes him untraditional, and that's what actually gets him into trouble, because the leader is expected to speak in certain way, but sometimes also not particularly helpful. And so I think the driving force will be that so-called Chinese influence. I want to believe that's what's driving at that, and perhaps I don't want to believe in an American president who have an expansionist ambition. The Greenland issue is also about security, about having perhaps another base, and maybe having an eye also on the deposit, mineral deposits in that very mineral-rich zone.
For me, I have like 3 questions. If you could do that for us in quick succession. Number one is, we have said it countlessly, yesterday was a day of flurry of signing of executive orders from the outgoing Biden, or the outgone now Biden, before he left, where we learned he did a pardon for some persons, his family members, Mr. Fauci, and all of those guys, and which many persons never saw coming. And some have said maybe that is a stain on the legacy of Joe Biden, or some would say, it would say, let's just risk it all. Mr. Trump came into power, and few hours is already signing, pardoning his supporters, the Capitol riot and all of those things. First of all, with the Biden administration who did that pardon, somebody who has said, and before that, like 2 weeks ago, he pardoned his own son as well, Joseph Biden Jr. And this was somebody who said he was going to step off, wasn't going to be involved in anything that has to do with the judiciary and all of those things. Did you see that? And do you concur with people that said that action of Joe Biden tainted his legacy? And your take about the pardon of, the Capitol rioters as well by Mr. Trump?
So, I mean, for Trump pardoning the J6 rioters, he said this again and again. Many people, in fact, expected it to be part of his inaugural speech. He later explained that he was advised to leave that out of his inaugural speech because his advisors believe that will taint the speech and draw attention from other parts of the speech and focus only on that one because it's such a contentious issue that many people feel it's a dark moment in American history. So everybody knew that was going to do that. And so Joe Biden also issuing a number of pardons perhaps gave him some moral equivalence, some sort of legitimacy for Trump to go ahead and do that of the J6. Everyone knew was going to do it. I'm doing it anyway. But for Joe Biden, undoubtedly, I mean, it affects his legacy. And this is part of what many people, neutrals, including myself, feel is the hypocrisy of the left and the liberals. If you recall in 2020, at the twilight of the Trump administration that time, when it was about leaving office, Democrats, including Joe Biden, in fact, I've seen some of his, I've seen again yesterday, some of his videos, talked about how it would be morally reprehensible, how it would be bad, how it would be horrible for Trump to even attempt. It wasn't even thinking, it wasn't even saying it. I think it was even perhaps some conjectures that time about Trump wanting to pardon some of his staff or some of his family members and saying that would be morally reprehensible, it's uncalled for, it shouldn't be done, it's not this and that, people lambasted him and all of that. It's about the hypocrisy of the media, the hypocrisy of the political class of the left. And so when he did it, it's within his powers. American presidents, including the ones before, Bill Clinton, Barack Obama, all of them make pardons are controversial in the final hours, in the final days of their presidency. So it wasn't unusual. But the fact that these people have criticized, lambasted Trump for even thinking about doing such. I'm not sure he did it. I don't have the facts now, so I'm not able to say categorically if he did it. But so now turning around, doing 360 and doing same, and even doing sort of an anticipatory pardon. Because for Hunter, including crimes he has committed and crimes that he may commit within a certain context, were pardoned. And Biden also hid under saying, he fears that Trump will go after his family members and pardon every member of his family, including brothers and sisters. It's almost unprecedented, in American history, including Dr. Fauci for his role in COVID. And some have said, if Dr. Fauci said he followed science, why should he be pardoned? But I think they also have some right to having such fears that Trump may go after them, their concerns. And it may be genuine that Trump can go after them, but it also speaks to the hypocrisy of the left, the liberal left, and the media about many of the. There are a lot of things that those in that side do, especially you're talking about, those on the left do that the media ignores, the political class ignores. For instance, Trump, is unconventional, it's not traditional. Yesterday I was saying, I was signing executive orders, and then you had a lot of media men in the Oval Office with him asking questions saying, did Biden ever do something like this? Asking about if Biden actually talked to the press, unscripted for us. So it's obviously a taint on his legacy, and it's something that sort of gives Trump that moral equivalency to do what he did also in pardoning his own supporters, the J6 rioters, which I feel shouldn't have happened. If those people committed the crime, should have been able to serve it. Yep.
All right. Many questions to ask, actually, but I'll take your part in short. We saw at the inauguration yesterday, especially, by the way, for Elon Musk. He was there. Jeff Bezos, Mark Zuckerberg, many of these big guys were there yesterday. But one of the things, Mr. Biden, and by the way, thank you for the correction. I meant to say Hunter Biden earlier, not just a Biden. Thank you for that. Just to clarify. Now, some of those new development from Trump has to do with the electric vehicle thing. It seems Donald Trump is not really sold out to that idea, and he has made some push, some announcement in that regard. And here we are. One of his biggest supporter is Elon Musk, who is into Tesla and electric vehicles. How do you see that panning out?
I mean, it's interesting, and it remains to be seen how that will pan out in the coming weeks and months ahead. But excuse me, you should not be surprised. It's the disposition of the Republican Party to EVs has been one of skepticism. They're worried, about the potential impact on the auto industry, which employs a lot of people here in America. And so I don't think it's like canceling out EVs, but perhaps withdrawing the mandate. I mean, the EV mandate gives a lot of discount for those buying EVs and sort of mandate. The Republicans are a lot that does not like, forcing, having you to, kind of impose decisions like that. So it remains to be seen. I don't think it's going to be ultimately negative, really, for Elon Musk. And you know that he has several other interests. Donald Trump talked about going into the Mars. He has SpaceX, so there'll be other means for him to get patronage, if at all, if that's what he wants. And by the way, he had a lot of those tech billionaires. It's like a realignment, towards Donald Trump. This time, 2020, all of them were against him, but this time they are now with him. Many people are also saying, Biden also made reference to the fact that this is like an oligarchy, people coming here and then it's like a government of billionaires. But they also ignore the fact that there are also billionaires, other billionaires who also back the Democratic Party, George Soros, and many of them others, Michael Bloomberg, and all of them also had that. So it's interesting days in the coming days and months, and we definitely will be monitoring and see how things pan out for America and for the world.
Yes, we're totally out of time, but I'm not sure this particular episode will be complete. We're totally out of time. I understand, that, they possibly there will be sweeping border crackdown and, deportation push, migration, all of these things. Those concerned in that ecosystem, should they be worried?
Oh, they should be worried. Absolutely. I give you an instance. Yesterday, there's a CBP that the Biden administration used for those who want to come into the country, like seek asylum that they use. It's like an app. 10 minutes after swearing in yesterday, that app was shut down. Those who had the appointment for 1 p.m. was trying at the border. I saw pictures of them, some of them crying. The border is shut. There are concerns that ICE, that's the immigration, sort of enforcement here, will be moving around to deport people. By the way, it's just that Trump, the way Trump speaks, these are things that happen on a daily basis. In fact, Biden had a record deportation, was deporting as of last week, but this time perhaps the intensity will grow. So the border, those people should be concerned. The border has been shut. Effectively, I told you that the CBP has been closed. No one can access that app again. 10 minutes after it's already yesterday, and some of the other supports that these people have. So you expect to have tighter immigration rules, tighter border, enforcement, and many people will not be going to work today. Yesterday was a public holiday because it was MLK Day, but today a lot of immigrants, undocumented immigrants, will not be going to work out of fears of ICE. Perhaps raiding, and that will be a major concern in the weeks. But like I said, it's going to be a season of litigation also. Many people challenging their removals, their forced departures, and all of that. And we wait to see. Last time it was deemed to be a failure because it didn't follow through. But we are waiting to see how this will happen this time.
Interesting times are ahead. By the way, congratulations to America and, of course, the residents and the good people of that place as well. Femi Olalekan is a journalist and public affairs analyst. I joined us, from God's own country, the U.S. Thank you for your time and your take. So,
thank you. Thank you for having me. Thank you.
Welcome. And, there's always a lot to talk about, especially with the development. We're totally out of time for that particular conversation.
We're flying back to Nigeria.
Right, we are back. Yeah. So we'll take this break. When we'll come back, we speak to development, especially the issue of the fatal shooting of an EFCC operative and